You're listening to Napa Valley College Now on NAPAbroadcasting.com.
Thanks for joining us here at NAPAbroadcasting.com. This week, Napa Valley College celebrates its 75th anniversary. As we talked about last week with College President Dr. Ron Kraft, it comes at a time that may very well become the golden age of community colleges. Not everyone, including the President of the United States, may know what they are. But for the folks that do, they're an important part of education in America. At a time when education is at a premium and when the cost of the traditional four-year college is still skyrocketing. And for those of us in California, it continues to be an even more vital link in the master plan for higher education. To talk about her perspective on all of this, I'm joined by Ann Mancuso. She is currently the president of the Board of Trustees of Napa Valley College, the college's governing body, and it is my pleasure to welcome her here to NAPAbroadcasting.com. Ann, thanks so much for coming in.
Thank you, Jeff, for inviting me.
Well, it's great to have you here. First of all, talk about how long you've been on the board. When did you first join the board? And a little bit about why you originally decided it was something you wanted to do.
Would love to. I've been on the board now for about 5 years. The first year I was on the board was an appointment. Brenda Knight, who is in the district that I'm in American Canyon, resigned. And she resigned mid her term, so the board chose to make an appointment, and I made that. There were 8 people that came to that meeting for applications, and I was chosen, and I was very excited about getting on the board. Then I had an election that came up a year later, and had no opposition, so I was reelected to serve a full term, and now this year I'm up for reelection.
And one of the things about your involvement with the college is that in many ways it seems to tie in to what you do in your day job, as they say, that there's a real nexus between what it is that you are concerned about, what it is that you do in real life, and what you do in your Napa Valley College life. Thanks
for bringing that up. So that's exactly it. I live, eat, and breathe, as they say, workforce. My day job, as you mentioned, is in the employment staffing industry. I started in that industry back in 1978 when they were called employment agencies. And over time, they have developed into many other things. I've worked for a large international staffing company and small boutique staffing companies, but it's always been about, for me, there are all of these jobs in a good and a bad economy that often go unfilled because of the skills match, because of the workforce not having the skills that are in high demand. So that drove me into working with the Workforce Board back in 2005, which I've been on ever since. We've grown into 4 counties. We started out Napa County, now we're Marin, Lake, Mendocino, and Napa County Workforce Alliance of the North Bay. Then after being on the Workforce Board and this appointment came up to be on the Napa Valley College Board, I thought that was just another piece of it that brought it all together.
And with your day job hat on, how have you seen the role, and you've been doing that obviously a long time, longer than you've been involved on the board here, how have you seen the role of community colleges change and evolve as it relates to these workforce issues?
Well, it's definitely been at the table. You know, there was a time where we didn't feel like anybody was listening, and over time, you know, the community colleges really stepped up and, you know, came to the table and said, what can we do? What are businesses needing? What are the skills we should be training? And I think you see that at Napa Valley College every day because we're certainly listening to the regional employers and continue to ask, what do we need to do? What do we need to train? I think the greatest example is our psychiatric technician program, right? We graduate these psychiatric technicians who, before they, you know, even get off the graduation stage, have a job at Napa State Hospital, and they're making, you know, good wages, and it's a great job that then, for the most part, gets them motivated to move even further up.
And of course, things like the VWT program and the culinary
Absolutely.
program are really very much indigenous to the region.
Absolutely. And that's the point. A friend of mine who was also on the Workforce Investment Board one time said, we could train the best bullfighter in Napa County, but he won't be able to get a job, right? So it really is all about the region and the demand of the workforce.
Talk a little bit about, as president of the board this year, a little bit about your goals and your agenda in terms of what you would like. I won't say legacy because that sounds too grand, but what are the things that you would like to really make sure happen during your presidency on the board?
Well, there's two words we use all the time, right? Student success. And what does that look like? For me, that really is all about, students having an experience here that really changes their life and creates a path to where they go next. And I think that policies that come in front of us that our board can work on to help make that happen is our absolute highest priority. Mm-hmm. And anything we can do in the community to put people together, that's one of the things that I try to do every chance I get.
Talk about what that looks like in terms of bringing the college and the community closer together.
Sure. I am always thinking with all of my hats on. So when I'm talking business with someone, somehow it always rolls into here's what's happening at the college and how we can make those kind of connections. I was speaking with a regional winery that is a fairly large family-owned winery. And as we were talking about potential working with them on a business level, conversation came up about how we might also be able to help them with certain skill gaps that they have. And so I invited them in to sit down with Dr. Kraft, with Paul Gospodarczyk, who's our head of our winery program, mm-hmm. and Diana Chapoti, our dean of workforce development. And I can't remember if there was anyone else in the room. I think that might have been the key people, along with their cellar master and some people from their HR department, to really sit down and talk about what are those skills gaps that you're having, how can we help you in your recruiting process, and what does that partnership look like? So those are the kind of things that a board member is out there in the community, or should be out there in the community, making those connections and making things like that happen.
Mm-hmm. From your experience, both on the workforce side and the college side, what are some of the areas where the college could be doing more in terms of helping the workforce needs here in this community?
I don't know if the answer is more necessarily. I think that our community and our college are working really well together. There are many programs that, for instance, Diana Chapoti, our mm-hmm. dean over workforce development, is connecting with the community on the workforce level. She's working with hospitality people. There's so many ways that we are connected. I think that it's more of a matter of people, time. It's getting people together, mm-hmm. getting them in the same space. It's also about funding to be able to expand programs, expanding facilities, things that are needed to really serve our community the way that we can.
Talk about the ways in which the electeds here in this community at all levels, city, county, at all levels, really work with the college, help the college, and vice versa. And are there areas they should be doing more?
I think we could do more. I really think we could do more. I would definitely like to see, and I've talked to my friend Ricky Hurtado, who's running for city council in Napa, that I would love to see us have more of those kind of conversations. I know that the cities and the Board of Supervisors have meetings and have various times that they're sitting at the table
Right.
together and talking about issues that I think it would be great if we could also be at the table and have more of those conversations, have a much stronger partnership than we do.
What's been the biggest surprise for you in terms of learning about the college and things you might not have expected before you were on the board, before you were in the thick of it as you are now?
Everything. Joanne Busenbark said, when she left, she said she looked at me in the very beginning and was just thinking to herself, or maybe she even said it out loud. We all know that Joanne is, not afraid to do that. And she said, it was just amazing how little you really knew walking into this. And she's right. There's nothing really similar other than there are things that you bring to the table from your life.
Right.
But there's so much you have to learn about participatory governance, that you learn about the whole structure of the college and what your role is and most importantly what your role isn't. And the other thing is all the acronyms.
Right. A lot of those.
A lot of acronyms, but I think my biggest surprise of all was probably learning what a community the campus itself is, learning how everybody works together. I didn't see that walking in the door, that there would be such a connection in all of the departments, from faculty to classified, administrators. It's a family. Mm-hmm. And I really didn't expect to walk in and see that kind of environment as much as it is.
Mm-hmm. You mentioned a few minutes ago learning about the role of the board. Talk a little bit about that and what you see that role to be, or what you've learned it to be.
So the role of the board is a policy setting role. And you have one employee, and that employee is Dr. Kraft, the president of the college. And through Dr. Kraft is where the board makes policy and delegates to the president of the college to then, provide to the faculty and staff what the board policies have come up with. And so our role, is to really try to assess everything that comes in front of us, to do our homework, to make sure we're out in the community and understanding how the involvement is with the community as well as the college, and how we work together, and then to be able to sit down at the table, have debate, discuss issues, and make policy decisions. And again, going back to, I think that the role that for me is maybe one of the most comfortable pieces of the job is working with the community and building these partnerships and bringing community members to the table, as well as bringing the college to the table where we might not be.
Talk a little bit about the 75th anniversary and the big celebration coming up this weekend.
Very excited this weekend. Yes, so 75th anniversary, there's going to be so many activities for everybody, especially for young people, adults, everyone. So it's an opportunity for everybody to get on campus and really see what's here. We're such a community asset that I don't think people have any idea what we have to offer on a full scale.
Right. Are you surprised, and you're out in the community a lot, are you surprised sometimes at how little people know about what goes on here? I mean, they know it's the college. I mean, they know the basics. But it's surprising often how little they know about the community that's here, as you said before.
It's very true. I think that's been a real eye-opener in talking to people and people not realizing all that the college has to offer to the community. I love when people come to the campus for a play or something for the first time, and you're sitting next to somebody and they start talking about, wow, this is an incredible theater, what, and of course this was part of something that the community voted in some time back,
Right.
that this building came to be. So it's come out to the college and see what's here. And I think that that's always a surprise when people are seeing something for the first time or not even realizing that it exists. And I think things like the film festival, some of our plays, some other community events. We recently had that big legislative breakfast,
Right.
where people were there for the first time. That I think people are starting to pay more attention.
The other big event, and not a fortunate one necessarily, but it did give a lot of exposure to what goes on here at the college, was the fires, and this being one of the central evacuation centers.
That was just so heartwarming to see how that all came about. Our staff they just jumped to it. I mean, there was no hesitation, and people were. I think it's hard to describe, Jeff, but people just saw a job to be done, and they just did it. And so before you know it, there's a coach who's,
Right.
creating this great drop-off organization where they were organizing all of the things that people were donating. Our campus nurse, or medical professional, Nancy, she was in the room where all the beds were, where all the evacuees were, and she was, walking up and down the aisles, an evacuee herself, making sure that people had what they needed, and if they didn't, she was the person who would make sure that they did. And there was no one. I mean, eventually, and very quickly, they did create an organizational system where everybody had a roster of who was on campus at the time and how to get a hold of them. And
But what's
it was
so
great.
I mean, there's lessons somewhere in there, and I haven't thought about this before, but there's really management lessons in there, because it all happens spontaneously. We've all been in organizations, and I had a conference call on something entirely different this morning, where there's all this talk about, you have meetings, and then you have meetings, and you have meetings, and you organize this, and there's a working group, and This just happened.
It
all
did.
worked so well.
It did. But again, that goes back to what I think I was saying earlier, that surprised me coming in here, is this family working
Right.
together environment, is that everybody just took ownership and seen something that had to be done and did it.
Great. Well, let's remind everybody again, the 75th anniversary is a full-day open house. It'd be Saturday, the 14th. This coming Saturday begins at 10 a.m. in the morning, goes to 4 in the afternoon, and it's an opportunity to see really every working part of what goes on here.
Absolutely. Walk around the campus, get to know us.
Ann Mancuso, I thank you so much for coming in.
Thank you for inviting me.
Thank you.
NAPAbroadcasting.com, the online radio home of Napa Valley College.